how would you safely say that the 2025 national budget met the aspirations of the people of constituency?
I would say yes, because of course in as far as Zambezi East is concerned, we were expectant that CDF will be disbursed, and CDF is the main game changer in rural constituencies like Zambezi East constituency. We've been able to put up quite a number of pieces of infrastructure, including classroom blocks, health centers, health facilities in far-flung areas, in rural areas, and we've also been able to venture into road infrastructure maintenance. We procured 5 pieces of roadworks equipment, namely a grader, a water bowser, a roller compactor, an excavator, and what we call as a water bowser, a grader, a roller compactor, an excavator, and which one have I forgotten? There's a 5th one. Of course, the whole set.
Could it be a compactor?
A tipper.
Oh,
a tipper, yes, for picking up the material which we use for road construction. So these 5 pieces of equipment have been helping us. We just embarked on rehabilitation of these roads. We started with township roads. Then we are now rolling out, I think during this week, we'll be going into feeder roads. There's a road which starts from a place called Chilenga, going all the way to Nyakolenga and Kateji, connecting with Kapompo constituency. We are going to embark on it starting from this week. Of course, we have had a little bit of challenges in terms of teething problems because of the distance there. Sometimes fuel supply is erratic. So whenever the fuel is available, the equipment is on the road every day. Because we allocated also money for running costs. And as you heard from the President's pronouncement, where there was a 3 million, that was 3.2 million that was allocated to constituencies for running costs for those that would like to embark on rehabilitation of feeder roads. And communication in itself is very important as it drives development.
And I know we'll get to some of the successes your constituency has scored in the 2025 national budget, and also what aspirations are you looking for in the 2026 national budget. I should also make mention that we've been joined by Mr. Philip Chitalu, who is Chief Executive Officer from the Security and Exchange Commission here in Zambia. So thank you so much for waking up early and joining us this morning. I know there's serious traffic here in Lusaka, but how is the Commission doing?
We're doing fine, and thanks for inviting me to your station. I think it's my first time here. The Commission is doing well. I think with the policies that are being put in place, the stability in the economy, that's what we need in order to perform. So we're doing good.
The Minister of Finance will be here on Friday to present the estimates and revenue expenditure for the financial year 1st January to 31st December 2026. And how would you rate the performance of the budget we're currently in, the 2025 national budget, regarding what we're looking at the fiscal consolidation?
I think if you refer to the President's speech, Parliament last week, and more so specifically towards capital markets, I think there's been a lot of stability, and we've seen the performance of the market arise from the stability. Inflation is going down, exchange rates are stable, and those are the things that we get to see in order to have a good performing capital markets. Capital markets is where you raise long-term funding. So for long-term planning and funding, you need stability in inflation, or low inflation, stability in the exchange rates, and lower interest rates. We've already started seeing the yields going down, which is good for the private sector in terms of borrowing. The private sector needs lower interest rates for them to invest in the long term. So the capital markets is long-term markets where you get to raise this funding. The banks meant, but the banks cannot lend to you for the long term because, look, they're using depositors' funds to lend. Depositors can withdraw their money at any one particular time, but capital markets, where you use your shares or you raise funding through bonds, thrives where lower inflation, stability in exchange rates, and low interest rates. Okay. So this is what we've seen in 2025, and we expect that more gains on these three factors will be achieved in 2026.
Okay. My sign language interpreter this morning is Jason Manda. Today we are looking at the fiscal consolidation in the 2026 national budget. And my two guests that I have this morning, I do have Mr. Brian Kambita, who is Zambezi East Parliamentary Constituency Member of Parliament, and Mr. Philip Chitalu, who is Chief Executive Officer from the Security and Exchange Commission right here in Zambia. And the number that we're using, if you wish to be part and parcel of today's presentation of the 2026 pre-budget analysis, is 0978 772801. Now, I'll get back to you, Mr. Chitalu, knowing that the minister will be here this coming Friday. Now, how do you expect the 2026 national budget to impact the capital markets in Zambia, particularly in terms of investor sentiment and market performance?
Yeah, I think we've got a number of flagship products that we expect to be positively impacted by the further consolidation in the financial sector. We have challenges, for instance, in energy, but then those are the opportunities in terms of the private sector being able to raise long-term funding, build up solar infrastructure, and pretty much other developmental infrastructure. But you can only do that, like I said, with a low inflation, because inflation gets to impact on your returns. Mm-hmm. So what we expect is we expect to see more of capital raising, such as what the CEC has been able to raise. I think this has been phenomenal in the sense that the Copper Belt Energy Renewables registered a $200 million green bond. They've raised already $156 million towards their two solar plants, and one of them already started producing something like 60 megawatts. The other one is coming on by December, I understand. So these are these projects that you expect to see with the stability that we're beginning to see in the economy. So we need, and we're expecting that with Minister's budget coming on this Friday, we are very, very positive that come 2026, we'll expect to see even lower inflation, which should impact the interest rates. And once the rates go down, then we expect the private sector to be able to raise funds for long-term investment. Okay. Remember, it's only investments that can create income, and income creates jobs, and everyone is happy. Okay.
Honorable Kambita, as members of parliament, how are you helping the government to make sure that you create a conducive environment that will attract these investors? At the end of the day, we'll have a stable economy.
First of all, we do have a plethora of regulations which exist in Zambia, which encourages investment, especially direct foreign investment. We've got the Trade and Investment Act, which regulates investment in the country, and we also have the ZDA Act, which ushers in an institution that supports investment in the country, and of course riding on the Trade and Investment Act, Regulation Act, which regulates investment and also provides particular incentives in priority areas. And Parliament is responsible for actually enacting such pieces of legislation, including fine-tuning them in line with the policy direction given by the President in his presidential speech, which are actualized and crystallized in the Minister of Finance's budget speech, meaning that the policies that are actually actualized in the budget speak to these pieces of legislation. And if there is any changes that should favor investment or encourage investment in the country, we have the responsibility of ensuring that we fine-tune. That's why this meeting, which runs up to December, is the budget meeting, which will be predominantly discussing the budget and eventually approve the budget. And when the budget has been approved, in order to implement it for the coming fiscal year, we are going to have what we call as the legislative meeting of Parliament. During the legislative meeting of Parliament, that's when amendments and enactment of laws that are in tune with the implementation of that particular budget will be rolled out. And that's how I see our role in ensuring that we support the budget of the fiscal year.
Before I get to Mr. Chitalo, which area or which area would you want or incentive would you want the budget to be funded more from you as area member of parliament for Zambezi East?
Clearly, the budget will stem from what is provided for in the 8th National Development Plan. The 8th National Development Plan has set out objectives or what we want to achieve for ourselves in the 8 years, in the long-term period that has been set out. And then there is also the medium-term budget plan, which the Minister of Finance produces and from which the Minister of Finance extracts the annual budgets. So what is expected of this is a budget that responds to current situations. At the moment, we're grappling with the energy sector, which is actually just surviving because of the force majeure that happened the previous year in terms of the drought, the severe drought. And in response to that, we need to invest in energy. Of course, you heard from the President's address that we did not make that much of investment in the energy sector, and this could be the reason to why we are actually suffering in this manner. Therefore, I expect the Minister of Finance to come up with policies that incentivize investment in energy, especially the private investment in energy, to ensure that probably importing of equipment meant to come up with the production of energy can have some incentives, and these should actually be pronounced this Friday. That's my expectation. My other expectation is to continue incentivizing production in the mining sector, as that contributes to the growth of the GDP, which we plan to be between 6 to 10% going forward. And this is contained in the 8th National Development Plan. So in line and in tune with our 8th National Development Plan, it's expected that this budget will address issues that target those milestones we have set for ourselves.
Mr. Chitalo, I know for any investor to invest in a particular country, they really need to feel secured. And what provisions do you foresee or do you hope to see in the 2026 national budget that will protect investors, particularly in the context of risks and uncertainties? Because you did talk about having more investors. That's when we'll have a stable economy.
Yeah. I think sticking to capital markets or the financial sector, in terms of protection of investors, the starting point is the stability in the macroeconomic factors that we mentioned. I always give examples, like if you want to attract foreign investment, if somebody brings in $1 million, you should guarantee, let's say at an exchange rate of 24, you should have a stable exchange rate such that even if 12 months later they want to take out their $1 million, they won't take out less just because of the exchange rate. Imagine that if the exchange rate went to 25, which means if you did nothing, just put your money in the bank, you may get out less because of the fluctuation in the exchange rate. This is why we're saying with the consolidation that has taken place so far, which we expect to continue in 2026, that should be able to protect foreign investors that bring money into Zambia, and when you're taking it out, it will not have been eaten up by a movement in exchange rate against you.
Okay.
Then we also need to see that inflation is brought back, I think if you hear in the pronouncements, back into the expected band, 6 to 8%, which is quite important. And already we are now, we've seen the improvements in inflation figures. I think we are almost getting to 12, 11. So 2026, I hope we get back into the 6 to 8. Okay. That also protects long-term investment, because if you are in fixed income securities, you know, a fixed income security gives you a fixed amount of repayment. When you buy government paper, for instance, at let's say 20%, if inflation is at 13, your real return is basically 7%, because inflation takes out 13 from 20, so you remain with your 7. If inflation gets down back to 6 to 8, then you have positive real returns. That's the protection that we require for long-term investment. Low inflation, stable exchange rates. I'm talking about stable exchange rate and not necessarily low exchange rate. I think sometimes these two things are confused. I would rather have an exchange rate of 24 but stable for a number of years. When it moves maybe by 5 ingwe or 10 ingwe, it moves to 24.10. That ensures that I can plan for long term and be able to sustain my business. I put in all the costs into the production processes, and I plan for a pricing that gives me a return. That's what investors want. Okay. Stability, to be predictable, and then we'll see a lot of flows into the economy. But coming back to something else that I think the President did allude to is the performance of the Lusaka Stock Exchange, which is basically also positive impacted by the positive sentiments that come out of an economy. You know, investors willing to move their money into an economy where there's positive sentiments, and those positive sentiments basically result in positive performance of the economy. Okay. So we expect to see more foreign direct investment, which can come through the capital markets. The CEC capital raise that I talked about, quite a bit of that $156 million did not come from Zambians. We need to attract savings. Okay. You know, most of the African countries, not just Zambia, we have low savings rate, which means we need to attract other people's savings. And other people's savings can only come to Zambia when the factors that I've talked about are predictable. Okay.
Now, how does your commission ensure that investors have access to timely and accurate information about the budget's impact, more especially on the capital market?
You know, we run a website, and speaking about that, we also, the viewers, listeners should be able to know that on the Securities and Exchange Commission website, we also publish almost daily bond trades. I'm speaking about bond trades because almost every Zambian knows the exchange rate. I think Radio Phoenix and other stations such as yours, you are always talking about the kwacha to dollar exchange rate. But what we don't talk about is the bond rates, the bond prices. We need to attract retail investors back into saving for long-term investment. If you see in Ethiopia, I think they've been able to build a power station largely funded by the diaspora and locals. We can do it. We can do investments into energy, for instance, by attracting low savings into projects. So those are some of the things that we get to disseminate.
Okay.
Any tax impact, for instance, the withholding tax, maybe on investments into energy, and anything else that the minister will be able to pronounce. If it does affect any of the products that we do, the shares, the bonds, the real estate investment trust, the collective investment schemes, then we'll be able to disseminate that on our website. And we hold town hall meetings every last Thursday of every month.
Okay.
So when we find a topical issue, we go onto social media and try to share and explain the impact of budgetary pronouncements on the performance of the capital markets.
And looking at, talking about social media, we're also live on our National Assembly Facebook page and the YouTube page as well. Like that page and let us know where you're watching us from. Let me also just acknowledge the few people that are with us on our platform. We do have Levi Kapondola. You are watching us from Chavuma in Northwestern Province. I also have Santos Jacinto Soma watching from Livingstone, the tourist capital. Thank you so much. And the other one is Melvin Kandulika watching us from Ndola and Margaret Chileshe. You are live from Livingstone. Thank you so much, and keep watching us, and let us know where you're watching us from. If you have any question or contribution, feel free to participate. And the number that we're using, and very shortly I'll be able to read your text messages that you are sending in, is 0978 772801. That's 0978 772801. And let me get to the Honorable Member for Zambezi East. I know the budget is done, consultations were done. The minister is just waiting to pack that budget estimates into the copper briefcase and wait for Friday to come and present it. What proposals or incentives would you want to see in the budget that will benefit the people of Zambezi East?
Indeed, these things are related, and my colleague here from the Securities and Exchange Commission alluded to the fact that he would like to see a stability in the exchange rates, also in the inflation rate, and this would encourage investment, especially foreign direct investment. And to achieve that, there are some measures that the Minister of Finance has to make. And one of the measures that I mentioned was to encourage production, local production, and encourage exports. And when you encourage production, which also increases exports, you tend to benefit from the balance of payments. And the nation's current account is improved, and we have an exchange rate which is likely to be stable. And so those measures that were undertaken starting from the previous year, which encouraged production in the mining sector, we are already hovering around 700,000 tons of copper, and we are targeting 1 million by the end of this year, which means that we are actually on the right trajectory, considering the fact that in the previous periods, especially in the previous regime, we were hovering around, I think, just above 230 or so thousand tons, and copper production had actually plummeted because of probably certain policies that were made at that time. And with these policies that seem to be working well and on a good trajectory, we expect the exchange rate to be much more stable, supported in that sector. However, it's not just the mining sector. The agriculture sector can also be very significant in providing stability in the exchange rate, including the inflation rate. The calculation of the inflation figure includes quite a number of products that come from the agricultural sector, foodstuffs, for instance, tomatoes and the like. So if the price of such foodstuffs stabilize due to the forces of supply and demand, it's expected that the inflation rate will also be arrested. So I expect the minister to push more and encourage agricultural production. Of course, the continuation of the FISIP, the Farmer Input Support Program, in a much more organized way, where he has pronounced himself that we are now going to use the e-voucher as opposed to the other method of providing inputs to farmers. This enhances accountability and ensuring that the right beneficiary gets this support from government.
Okay.
And it's expected that in the agricultural sector, by encouraging production also, there is avenues for providing financing through the SAF program and many others, including irrigation schemes, so that farmers who wish to expand the production will have avenues to actually tap from. It's expected also that, I'm expecting that within the agricultural sector, the minister should do what was done in the education sector by recruiting more agricultural extension officers,
Okay.
including encouragement of putting up infrastructure in the agricultural sector, what we call as agricultural camps. And this is where I come in now as a member of parliament to ensure that we put up infrastructure using CDF, like camp officers' houses in the far-flung areas to support those our subsistence farmers in order for them to improve production.
I knew that agriculture won't be left out. Looking at the constituency where you're coming from, this is Zambezi East, and it's a rural constituency, and majority of the people there in your constituency are farmers, and definitely you need the minister to tackle the agriculture sector. Mr. Chitalu,
Yes.
You kept on talking about the president's address when he opened the 5th session of the 13th Assembly. And one of the pronouncements that the president made was a target that is given to the Ministry of Mines, where they've been given a target to reach 3 million tons of copper by 2031. And you are dealing with markets, and you really want the capital markets to be stable.
Yeah.
And we can only make it stable if we enhance the production, because it will earn us foreign exchange. Yeah. What policies would you really, or incentives would you advise the Zambian government to put in place to make sure that they actualize these 3 million tons of copper production by 2031?
Yeah. I think the biggest issue is investment. 3 million is a very, very good target in terms of what we're talking about. More forex comes in, more jobs, of course, to mine and refine and do everything towards 3 million. That means more jobs. But then infrastructure comes in. We need to produce 3 million. We need more power. We need more roads. And housing, what the Honorable MP is talking about, housing. And this is where the capital markets comes in. You could basically issue an infrastructure bond to target specific infrastructure. And this has been done. And again, referring back to the president's speech, people with 100 kwacha, 1,000 kwacha, 500 kwacha could actually put their money into an infrastructure bond. I think we should start talking more about capital markets, especially if we are to do long-term investment. Going the banking way is good in the short term for working capital, but to lock up money, for instance, in a 25-year energy-producing plant, you can't borrow from the bank.
Okay.
It becomes very, very expensive, and it can disturb your cash flows. So I see that with the stability in those things that we've talked about, infrastructure development could be done using capital markets. We're already speaking with our colleagues in state-owned enterprises, looking at ways and means that we could assist the Minister of Finance in raising finance outside of the government balance sheet. I think we have a lot of SOEs that could raise money, just like the private sector has, and free up the cash flows on minister's budget into the things that the Honorable MP was talking about.
Okay.
The social aspects of the economy that cannot be funded straight from capital markets. We concentrate more on where people expect a return, and it's either to get a return from a commercial side of investment. than the social aspects of economy as aware now about the possibilities that capital markets have done. Speaking of agriculture, for instance, we already have two of probably the largest agricultural entities in Zambia listed on the capital markets or the Securities and Exchange Commission. Zambia Sugar, you're talking about Zambif. Zambif basically grew on the backdrop of raising money from our capital market. Some of the huge infrastructural or agricultural or other investments, it's impossible for one person to find all the needed funding. But collectively, through capital markets, can you imagine if 1 million Zambians each contributed just 1,000 kwacha? That's 1 billion kwacha, right? So if 10,000 kwacha was invested, we could be able to build up a lot of infrastructure through capital markets. Investment, most of the investment requires patient capital. I doubt whether the money markets can give you patient capital for 25 years. Maybe you'll be lucky and get 5-year loans, 7-year loans. But 25 years, that's a bit of a push, and this is where capital markets come in.
All right, let's see if we do have some messages on 0978 772808, 0978 772801. That's our SMS line if you wish to be part and parcel of today's presentation of the 2026 pre-budget analysis. And let's check on our screens if we have some text messages. This one coming from Mwangana, progress from Kaoma in Western Province. Good morning. It's really an amazing program to every citizen of this great land, and my greetings to Mr. Kambita. Thank you so much. Somebody just greeting you, Honorable, there. Okay, so keep sending those text messages. The number that we're using is 0978 772801. And let's see who we have on our Facebook page. And this is Frank Kalongola watching you live from Mokoshi. And Melvin, that's Margaret Chideshe also from Ndola. So the number that we're using is 0978 772801. We are discussing a very interesting subject, the fiscal consolidation in the 2026 budget, which we all know that the Minister of Finance will be here this coming Friday to present the 2026 national budget. And Mr. Kambita, how do you think the budget should be allocated to benefit your constituents and the country as a whole? And I also want you to maybe be biased towards the vulnerable. I know we do talk about the budget in most cases, development here and there, some of the changes, the major pronouncements that the minister will make. But at some degree, we neglect the vulnerable in our society. More especially, let's narrow it to your constituency, because we do have people living with disability in your constituency. How should the 2026 budget be inclusive when we talk about the vulnerable in our communities?
Thank you very much, President. Allow me to build my response in this way. Annual budgets stem from national development plans. And in our current national development plan, we've got objectives that we've set for ourselves. And the minister is usually aligning each national budget in this period of the national development plan in line with those targets which we've set for ourselves. And some of them, to mention a few, were to ensure that there's budget credibility, which I'm sure we have achieved in a great way. Budget credibility speaks to dispersing funds according to the way they have been appropriated by Parliament. And this has happened, and I think the budget performance reports that have been disseminated on the floor of the House by the Planning and Budgeting Committee speak to this effect. The other objective or policy that we have set for ourselves is to ensure efficiency in public expenditure. And what we had set for ourselves include also the support to private sector-led growth. And the private sector-led growth encourages investment, which my colleague from SEC alluded to. Government has set out priority areas, including priority sectors in which investors can invest, and incentives provided. There is also the enhancement of domestic resource revenue, and measures have been put in place. The other week I attended a workshop which ZRA had arranged, a tax symposium, and we were actually armed with knowledge of what ZRA is doing to ensure that they enhance the domestic revenue or domestic resource mobilization, which is key because a budget needs to be financed. So how will a budget be financed? There must be largely resources mobilized domestically, and for you to do that, every Zambian must participate in putting money into this national coffer in order for us to meet these expenditures for the things that we wish to invest in. Mm-hmm. By doing so, government came up in the 8th National Development Plan with another policy to help meet, especially the social needs, the PPP model. The PPP model gives you an avenue of involving the public to invest in infrastructure development, freeing the monies that are mobilized through domestic resource mobilization for funding towards the social sector. And I expect the minister to come back and enhance more of the PPP model, especially in sectors that can easily be financed by the investors, so that we have more money available for social spending. Zeroing it down to my constituency, if that is achieved, then it means that there would be cause for increment of the CDF or sustaining the level at which the CDF is, meaning that we will have more disposable income in order for us to invest in supporting the vulnerable people through the grants that we give to vulnerable people, which can help clubs, associations to come up with livelihood businesses and entrepreneurship, including infrastructure development at the micro level, meaning we will be improving the livelihood of the people at the household level in that way. Okay. So I'm building it starting from National Development Plan to the micro level at the household level. And if the budget estimations stick to these policies we have set for ourselves, then it's expected that the budget that will be presented on Friday will definitely achieve for the people I represent, the people of Zambezi East.
Mr. Chitalo, Honorable Kambita has brought in a very sensitive subject, the issue to do with PPs, and we do see members of parliament debating on the floor of the House regarding the PPs. Now, how do you make sure that as a commission, how do you make sure that the PPs are structured in a way that promotes transparency, accountability, and fair returns, more especially to the investor?
Yeah, I think the last question is easier to answer, fair returns. In most of capital raising structures, there's what we call a prospectus or another issue document where parameters such as interest rates, repayment periods, and everything else is disclosed. We need to develop a culture of reading, in the sense that when a prospectus is issued, people should be able to read, question, and see whether that particular investment suits their circumstances. If you are using retirement funds, you have gotten your retirement package, is this a particular project that you can go in? Does it protect your well-being? So all this information is usually disclosed in a prospectus. Now, we are yet to see any of the PPPs listed. I think this is what we have in our capital markets master plan. Again, the capital markets master plan is a document that was developed by the Ministry of Finance and approved by Cabinet about 3 years ago. And this is a document where we have aspirations, strategies of ensuring that the public can contribute in developing infrastructure and making other required investments. So I would advise and encourage people to read documents when they are published. Trying to sue when something goes wrong sometimes is a bit too long. You would have wasted a lot of time. So read the prospectus, question the disclosures that are given. I'll give you examples of some of the complaints or cases we get to handle, not necessarily direct to PPPs. There are products that, for instance, require to invest for 60 months before you can draw something out. Now, without assessing the suitability of this particular product, you sign for it. And 3 years down the road, your contract ends, and you want to draw money, and somebody points to some clause and say, well, you still have 2 years to go. No, but I need to pay school fees. But the contract you sign says 60 months. So what am I saying? Most of these details in the PPPs, in other capital raising, is in the prospectus or issued document. Okay. I would encourage the public to read those documents. Regulatory work for ourselves, the central bank, the PIA, and anybody else, I think starts with the users themselves. Because I give an example. Even where you live close to a police station, you're still encouraged to lock your door, so that you have local protection to yourselves even before you can call on the police. So read the document, and then with that, we'll be building a culture of long-term investors.
The accountability aspect?
The accountability all goes back to the prospectus.
Okay.
You need to always refer to the prospectus. What were we promised? Are we getting what we are promised? I think that's where accountability comes in. So without reading the documents, you may confuse yourself, or you may be demanding for rights and obligations that were never ever part of the document.
All right, let's see if we do have some text messages on 0978 772801. Before we do that, let me also acknowledge the people that I have on our Facebook page that are following us and enjoying the program. And this is Frank Kalongolo watching from Mukushi in Central Province. We also have Aaron Sikaonga. Mpika is watching. I'm also expecting the pay to be adjusted to 6,500 kwacha there. Daniel Eva Kavamba, okay, thank you so much. I'm sure you really were asking for a text line that you would want to get hold of us if you want to be part and parcel of this 2026 pre-budget analysis. And the number is 0978 772801. Let's check on our screen if we have some text messages. And the Minister of Agriculture announced that 153,000 are ghost farmers, and they are removed from the system, which are not true. Some farmers on the list are not ghost farmers. Some, they have even sold maize last year, and even this year they have sold to FRA. They should come in the camps and find out the truth. They should go through the FRA system. There will be okay, I can't see the other text message. Okay, let's see the other one coming from Shiku, watching from Lusaka in Kalundu, right here. Our neighbors here. The Securities and Exchange Commission are doing a very commendable job towards investor protection and market development. I agree with Mr. Chitalu. It's of national importance to develop a collective investment scheme that focuses on infrastructure projects. Capital markets are the way to go. Thank you so much, Shiku from Chilundu, right here in Lusaka. Would you want to?
Yeah,
yeah.
You know, we went to Indonesia early this year, and I did share something with the policymakers. In Indonesia, they are developing infrastructure using collective investment schemes. Basically, like I said, 1 million people contributing 100 kwacha each. Suddenly, we have maybe $2 million that we can build a 2 megawatt solar plant. Individuals collective investment schemes. And then the schemes come with protective mechanisms, speaking about what you talked about. The assets are owned by a trustee. Now, I need to link this up with the number of scams that we've been getting almost on a weekly basis, of people being promised invest 500 kwacha and then you'll be getting 20 kwacha every day. And sometimes these people do get to receive the 20 kwachas. Now, can you imagine on the flip side, this guy is getting what appears to be small money, it's 500 kwacha. But if he attracts even just 1,000 people, he's already made 500,000 kwacha for himself, and usually then they completely disappear. So what I would encourage the public is speak to us, speak to licensed dealers. All the banks are licensed dealers, and you will end up investing in a legitimate product. But let's build infrastructure using collective investment schemes, and the law has enough provisions. But again, getting back to what the president said, I think there are things that we're looking at to change, fine-tune the law. I'm sure we'll be coming to Parliament through Minister, through Cabinet, fine-tune the law so that these collective investment schemes and other products can be used to develop our country. It's very possible. Before
I bring in Honorable Kambita, how do you make of the revenue, or should I say, we did see the Minister of Finance, Honorable Kambita, presenting supplementary budgets not too long ago on the floor of the House before the House adjourned. Maybe Mr. Chitalo, your comment on supplementary budgets? Do you think they are healthy to our economy?
I think these are done within the larger aspect of financing developmental and other revenue expenditures. I doubt whether we can do with government shutdown, for instance. These are important expenditures that are made to further achieve government objectives. I mean, we have to still pay civil servants. We still need to do a lot of things. So within the parameters of the budget, they are healthy, and I'm sure a minister and his team get to evaluate this and do what is necessary without affecting my favorite subjects, inflation, interest rates.
Yeah, I was getting to that because I really wanted to find out from your Commission's point of view, what are the implications of having supplementary budgets year in, year out?
I think it goes into maybe the way we do statistics, and invariably, especially for this year, I think we've seen a lot of activities around what was expected to be collected, especially from the donor going out. I doubt whether we could do without medicines, so the government had to do something. So as long as it makes economic sense, I think it's a good thing to do. You cannot do without medicines, for instance.
Honorable Kambita, supplementary estimates. I know it's a hot issue when it comes to debating.
Indeed, I was itching to make a comment to what your assertions meant. Supplementary budgets are actually not bad because they are provided for by the law. The Minister of Finance is actually empowered by the law to come back to Parliament to review the budget and present a supplementary budget. If you give also an example of the annual borrowing plan, which comes from the Public Debt Management Act, the Public Debt Management Act, which was passed in 2022, I think a Public Debt Management Act number 15 of 2022, provides for the Minister of Finance to come back to Parliament a second time to relook at an annual borrowing plan. And the annual borrowing plan is revisited because circumstances may change. At the time of budgeting like now, the Minister of Finance will provide both an annual borrowing plan and the national budget. And you may be aware that in the national budget, there is the revenue envelope and there is the expenditure side of it. That, in simple language, there is where the money will come from and how that money which has been received in the coffers will be expended. And these are estimates. That's why they call it a budget estimate. So what the minister will be presenting this Friday are estimates of revenue and expenditure, meaning that the revenue includes the domestic revenue mobilization, the grants that we receive, and what government plans to borrow from either external sources or internally through
Commercial banks.
through maybe securities,
Yeah, bonds.
bonds and the like. So this is what makes the revenue side of the budget, and this is how it shall be expended. Now, when you start implementing the budget starting from January 1, you realize that you may have a little more responsibilities due to circumstances changing, because circumstances will ordinarily change. That's why you have been given by the law that window to provide a supplementary budget. But then, the supplementary budget does not just look at the expenditure side, it also looks at the revenue side. It means the minister must come up with the means and ways of raising that money, which will be spent over and above what was appropriated in the Appropriation Act at December. So we will be passing an Appropriation Act, which act gives the authority to the Minister of Finance to spend the money or raise the money in a way that Parliament has approved. Now, the minister cannot spend over and above that amount without seeking authority of Parliament to spend over and above. That's why the supplementary budget. So I wanted just to explain a little bit about the supplementary budget.
Okay.
But then there's what we call the fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit comes in where you now have obligations that are hitting over and above what the budget provided for. Usually it's attained through accumulation of arrears. Like in the previous regime, what I noticed is where we had in 2020, I think, in the fiscal year of 2020, where there was an over expenditure in FISIP, including arrears. So this created a high deficit of somewhere above 14% of GDP. But then we always have to plan, and the Minister of Finance plans what fiscal deficit would be allowable, because there will always be this situation of a fiscal deficit. However, the ideal situation is for fiscal deficit to be at zero. It's expected a fiscal deficit of around 5% is acceptable of GDP, because circumstances differ year in, year out, and there would be situations where you need to react and satisfy a situation that has just happened, and government has a responsibility to actually respond to that. For instance, if there is a situation of extreme power deficit and you need, for instance, to invest a little more towards that in order to deal with the situation, it might create a fiscal deficit.
Okay.
So these things happen. The supplementary budget, a fiscal deficit happens, but the ideal situation is to ensure that the fiscal deficit is at zero.
Okay.
And this is what we are targeting at in the long term.
We are nearing the tail end of today's 2026 pre-budget analysis. Maybe, Mr. Chitalu, before we leave, your organization, issues to do with collaboration. How are you working with other regulators to ensure that coordinated response to reduce potential risk and challenges that the capital market face?
Very, very good question. In the financial services sector, we have three regulators. Ourselves, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Central Bank or Bank of Zambia, and our colleagues at the Pensions and Insurance Authority. But we also extend collaboration to the law enforcement agencies. For instance, the Financial Intelligence Center comes in very, very key in helping us put stability in the financial services market. We also work with other organizations such as the police, the Drug Enforcement Commission, especially that we do not have powers to arrest, for instance. We may find fraud, but then we can't arrest you. Then we have to refer that case to the police or the Drug Enforcement Commission. So we have collaborative meetings that we get to have to ensure that we provide the stability that is needed in the market. If you read the papers 2 weeks ago, I think there was a case about forfeiture of assets to the state, a collective investment scheme that did not operate above board. We referred that case to the Drug Enforcement Commission, and the commission worked with the DPP to repossess, I don't know what the correct term is, assets that had been bought with money that was meant for investors. It's a shame that whilst we are doing everything possible to grow the particular sector, there's always some elements that may not be aligned with the objectives, and this is where enforcement and other regulatory procedures have to be done to assure the public that their savings are protected. So the savings are protected by and large. There's growth in the sector. We now have over 1.3 million people with accounts either in a collective investment scheme, a couple of shares, or an investment in a bond. That is exclusive of those that are trading in government securities. For your information, we've been keeping statistics for the last 3 years in terms of the number of government bonds transactions. We have over 7,000 transactions every year. Okay. In terms of as a percentage of outstanding debt, in the last 3 years on average, about 50% of government paper gets to trade in the secondary market. So when you buy a bond, a government bond, you do not have to keep it until maturity. You go into the capital markets in the secondary market and you trade your paper. It takes not more than 3 days. So that's how we provide liquidity, and the liquidity in the capital markets helps the government raise funds in the primary market. So these things are happening. Don't put your money in the scams. They overpromise and they do not deliver. Not even they do not deliver. Put your money in regulated products, and you will over time get to see the aspects of growth. Okay. The 55% growth in the lucid, that's real. Okay. That's real. I could give examples of a few stocks that have gone up by over 100% in the last 2 years, which means if you invested at 10,000 kwacha, you'll be seated at 20,000 kwacha. That's the legitimate way of earning money. Anybody promising money in a couple of weeks, run away. I've always told people, I've never seen pigs that grow in 6 weeks. And yet we have had agricultural scams where people are promised returns in 6 weeks, and they're saying the investment is in pigs. Being promised heaven on earth. That doesn't work. Yeah. Mr. Kambita, as we conclude today's presentation, how can you parliamentarians and the security exchange sector work together to promote economic development and growth in our country? Maybe just under a minute.
Indeed, the Securities Act number 41 of 2016 is what is in force at the moment as law, and ago we amended this Securities Act, Amendment 1 of 2022, to give them a little more powers, and the Securities Exchange Commission these issues, manage the risk, and also encourage investment in securities. And to be specific, Section 9A of the Act gives these prohibitions of the capital markets operators. And my colleague here who works with these operators may have much more details. But from our side as parliamentarians, I think we have armed the Securities and Exchange Commission with the necessary pieces of legislation, including enhancing their functions and regulation. Being a regulatory institution, it's so important to ensure that security is guaranteed, including encouragement of investment into there, because the more transactions happen in the capital market, the more the economy grows, because this is the same capital that goes into production.
Okay. All right. Master, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity just to interact with you. And Mr. Chitalu, maybe under 30 seconds, your concluding remarks?
I think what the Honorable MP has said is the way it's been done. We were in the parliamentary buildings in 2022. We should be coming back. Going by the policy pronouncements, I think getting back to the President's speech, he says there are a few things in the law that we need to tweak. So I suspect that the policymakers will drive us in a particular direction meant to grow the market for the benefit of everyone. Okay. Like we've said, we need a lot of capital to develop. Okay.
Honorable Kambita, the Minister will be here on Friday. Your concluding remarks regarding the 2026 national budget, which will be presented this Friday.
I'm very expectant of a perfect budget.
Are we seeing CDF being increased? We can speculate here, Honorable. From 36.1.
I wouldn't really speculate that it would be increased, of course, save for the fact that to cater for maybe inflationary effects, there might be a slight increase. But if that didn't happen, sustaining the same level of CDF would actually do. What I'm just looking forward to is efficiency, probably in the disbursement of the same CDF, because this will speed up utilization of the CDF. I'm aware that policy was arrived at to disburse funds on demand. It should be driven by demand of the funds, so that we don't transfer money to sit in the CDF account, but we guarantee perfect utilization and efficient utilization of the CDF.
Honorable Kambita, thank you so much. Mr. Chitalu, appreciate for being here early in the morning, and you did react on short notice. We're humbled to have you this morning.
No, we are civil servants. We always get to be called for such kind of emergency issues.
All right, there you have it. So the Minister will be here this coming Friday, and this was last year's presentation, the budget speech, and it was beamed under the theme Building Resilience for Inclusive Growth and Improved Livelihoods. What will be the theme for the 2026 national budget? We leave it to the Minister of Finance and National Planning to be here on Friday and unveil the 2026 national budget. My guest on today's program, I did have Mr. Brian Kambita, Member of Parliament for Zambezi East, and Mr. Philip Chitalu, Chief Executive Officer from the Security and Exchange Commission right here in Zambia. My name is Paul Sentindovio on behalf of the entire production crew, and those of you that have been listening on radio, and those of you who took time just to send in your text messages, and on Facebook page, YouTube page as well, thank you so much. We'll be back tomorrow as we look at yet another sector. Keep listening and watching Parliament.